But now look at this. Here are data from the General Social Survey, 50,000 randomly sampled Americans. This is the percent who say they're very happy as a function of their religious attendance. And as you can see, we get exactly the opposite relationship, with religiously active people dramatically more likely to say that they're very happy. We can do this with crime rates. This is across the 50 United States. There's a positive correlation between religious attendance rates in the state and the crime rate in that state. Okay? So that states, for example, of the American South, such as Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, tend to have high rates of religious attendance and somewhat higher crime rates. And yet, when we look across individuals in the United States, we see that the most actively religious individuals have a dramatically lower crime rate. Okay? These are paradoxical findings, aren't they? They're going exactly in opposite directions, depending on whether we look across aggregate level data, state by state, comparing states or countries, or compare individuals within a country. By the way, the same thing is true of smoking, which is higher in the most religious states than it is in the least religious states, and yet across individuals, smoking rates are dramatically lower in the United States amongst people who are actively religious. And teen pregnancy, there's a whole list of variables, and they all come out in exactly the same way. Now, to the social scientists, this is kind of like, so cool, how could this be? It's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool, because these are not just little findings, these are dramatic findings. So, again, the religiosity of individuals is associated with good things, but the religiosity of a place is associated with lower quality of life by various measures in that place. That's until we control for income. Because those actively religious countries, like in West Africa, for example, are highly religious, and they're also desperately poor places. So what if we take income out of it? What we find is after controlling for income, that negative correlation across place goes away or even slightly reverses, depending on whether we're doing this across states or across countries. So anyway, this is just, this may be blowing your mind right now, and if I am, I apologize for that. But these are data that we're playing with right now and intrigued by, and that ultimately will find their way into the published literature, I think. By the way, just a couple other little facts from the positive psychology literature. Barbara Fredrickson, who's one of the distinguished positive psychologists, has studied how flourishing, thriving people spend their time by doing time logs. And what she finds is that these flourishing people, the greens, as compared to the depressed blues, spend much more time interacting with others. They spend more time helping others. They spend a lot more time exercising. And they spend a lot more time praying and meditating than do those who are depressed. So if there is, for individuals, if not for countries and states, some positive association between religious engagement and well-being, why is it? Well, we've talked about social support. The United States and Canada together have 350,000 local faith communities, each of which is, for their active participants, a support network, people who are there for one another. That's a big part of this religious engagement factor, it seems. Second contributor is what's called self-regulation or impulse control. Michael McCullough at the University of Miami published a digest of this research literature in leading journal of our discipline, noting that religious engagement is associated with a number of good things across individuals, with lower crime rates, lower teen pregnancy rates, increased rates of exercise, marital satisfaction. Guess what, folks? Self-control, the ability to manage your impulses, to delay gratification, is also associated with every one of those good things. And he has other evidence that he presents that religious engagement is a contributing factor to self-control and to impulse management. And that's he thinks, another reason for this association. We also have a number of studies that show that people who live with a deep sense of meaning and purpose in their lives live with greater well-being, some of whom find that under the influence of their religious philosophy or faith. We also have talked about self-esteem, the idea that If you accept yourself, maybe it's a little easier to love yourself and enjoy life. And for some people, the ultimate acceptance of what they take to be the ultimate of the universe may, for them, be a durable basis for their own self-acceptance. We also know that, curiously, people who are intensely preoccupied with the pursuit of happiness and trying to find it for themselves tend to be less happy than people who think less about happiness and instead focus on things, on people, on tasks, on vocations, and so forth, greater than self, than transcending self. Is there any tendency for religious engagement to encourage this kind of focusing outside of oneself? Finally, we have a new flourishing field of research in psychology of studies of what's called terror management. And it's how people cope with their awareness of and with reminders of their own mortality and eventual death. And is it true that if you think that in the end, no matter what terrible thing may happen to you, or may be afflicting your life right now, in the end, the very end, that as one mystic said some centuries ago, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. If you believe that, does that help sustain you as you cope with stress in the interim? Well, these are some of the ideas that some of the researchers have had to explain some of these correlations. At the end of the day, can you use this knowledge to enrich your own life? Well, a little bit. I will have to acknowledge happiness is genetically influenced. The traits that influence happiness, such as, and predict it, such as extroversion, are genetically influenced. So happiness is a little bit like cholesterol level. It's biologically influenced. But there are some things you can do through diet and exercise to tweak, to moderate your cholesterol level. Likewise, happiness is genetically influenced. Some people are just disposed to be happier than others. But there are some things you can do to make a difference. And I'll just highlight here two, knowing what my audience is. One I've actually referred to a moment ago in Barbara Fredrickson's work, namely on the benefits of aerobic exercise. We have study after study after study now that indicates that aerobic exercise is a reasonably powerful antidote, at least as effective as antidepressant drugs, for mild depression and anxiety. And it's healthy, so it's worth doing. Second, today's college students are a sleep-deprived generation. Was your body's natural yearning for sleep last night interrupted and cut short by an alarm this morning? If it was, and if that's routinely the case, and then you catch up on the weekends, and to some extent, I mean, that's just life, I understand that. But to the extent that people can manage their time intentionally so that their bodies have the sleep that their bodies wish for, they live with lower risk of colds and flus. They certainly live with greater energy and vitality and a sense of well-being and effectiveness and competence as they go through their daily life. So these are some things we can do. Now, I spell out some of these other things and have some other material and essays related to this in a website. I'll give you a moment. Oh, I was just going to have one more slide here of a therapeutic lifestyle change program for depressed people that a University of Kansas researcher has tested with notable success, where over a series of weeks, people are coached in building into their lives space for aerobic exercise, adequate sleep, in wintertime exposure to light, nurturing their social connections and so forth. And at the end of the day, it's a really health-giving kind of lifestyle change program that leads to better moods and certainly greatly reduced depression as well. So if you want more information on any of this, or you want to be interested in reading some essays or writing me a note or whatever, you can reach me through my name, davidmyers.org. So thank you very much for being such a great audience.